Welcome back to the Advanced Selling Podcast, the longest running sales training podcast history. We are back at another episode. I'm Bill Caskey.
I'm Bryan Neal here.
If you are new to the Advanced Selling Podcast, you will join about, 13 million people?
At least.
I mean, 13,000.
No. Oh, that listened ever. I thought you meant that listened ever.
13 million downloads. Yeah, 13,000 people on LinkedIn. And go join us. There's good conversations there, and we post situations and questions occasionally. So join us on LinkedIn, advancedsellingpodcast.com/LinkedIn. We're really happy you're here. And as I started this little bit about, if you're a brand new listener, go to advancedsellingpodcast.com. There's the top, 15 or 20 episodes of all time in terms of downloads. That's a good place to start.
Absolutely. Let's see here. I was going to ask you a question about something here, Bill. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Here's a question I have. This is a language question, by the way. By the way, as you know, we talked a little bit about our friends at Xactly Corp, who help you with commission planning and forecasting and things like that, or our partners for the month of March. We're talking about all things that forecasting, and we're going to talk about forecasting in a minute. Big topic. And so stay tuned for that. This is a word. Here's it. Words sometimes go together, right?
Mm-hmm.
I heard this phrase, and I want to know if you ever heard the word outside of the phrase, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. The word is tribulations. And the question I have, you always hear the word tribulations with the word trials. Mm-hmm. It goes along with trials and tribulations. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to think of a scenario where I've heard the word tribulations without the word trials in front of it. And I couldn't think of one. And I thought if anybody could think of one, Bill Caskey could think of one. It would be you.
But now
but you got to think about that.
Yeah.
So, and without it being even awkward. And I thought, just sort of goes together. And, you also, it feels like you can't say, if you look at the trials of his life, I'm like, he's been through a lot of trials and problems. You kind of have to say tribulations.
Yeah.
I don't even know what a tribulation is.
It's almost like I could see myself really trying to use one of those and not being successful because
right.
So, he's been through a lot of trials.
A lot of trials and things. Yep. We're trying not to say that.
Yeah. But there's other words when you were explaining it, I thought, well, there's other words like shits and giggles.
Totally. 100%. Right.
I don't like that term, but I've heard it before. It's like, well, there's never let's do it for giggles.
Let's do that for giggles. We're rated PG now. Welcome to the Disney Plus version of the Advanced Selling Podcast.
First time in 6,000 episodes.
Right. We're back on the E. I don't think the E matters anymore. Go to Spotify, look at the top 50 songs in the United States. They're all E. Anything you say has got an E on it. It's funny, isn't it? Okay,
so let's get into the topic because I'll have to think about
that. If you can come up with something,
maybe pick you up next week and talk
or other word pairs like you said, like that, blanks and giggles or trials and tribulations, or things that sort of have to go, like intents and purposes. Those sort of have to go together.
Yeah.
For all intents, I think we should do this. Like it doesn't make any sense. You got to say for everything. See, I think for all purposes we should do this. No, you wouldn't say that. You would only say, I think for all intents and purposes we should go. So we should combine those into one word because they're really just one word, even though they're three words. See that?
Or what's also funny is sometimes you'll hear people use one of the words correctly and the other word not correctly.
Right.
Well, we've had a lot of threats and tribulations here. You mean trials? And then you get threats.
No, threats. No, you don't. I know what you meant. That's not what you meant. All right. So we're carrying on our monthly theme with our friends at Xactly Corp. It's Xactly Corp.com is where you find out stuff about their programs and products. Really, really cool stuff. We're going to talk a little bit today about forecasting. And this, you talk about, Bill, if we want to make $1 billion, if we solve the forecasting problem for sales leaders in the United States and globally, it's all over. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really big problem. Very difficult to do. Xactly helps people do that. They really do it under the heading of helping people predict their incomes, which is interesting because if you're a incented comp salesperson, you think you'd want to predict your income pretty accurately over time versus getting surprised and going, I thought I was going to make 10 grand in commission in June and I only made 4, or vice versa. Or I thought I was going to make 6 and I made 20. That's not really good for the old household income, planning. So I want to get your take first of all. I started out by saying I think this is a huge problem. Most of the clients that we deal with, if you talk to their CEO, CFO especially, and then also their sales leader would say, yeah, we pretty much suck at forecasting, or we've gotten better, but it's still a big problem.
So what is it? Is it that they're over guessing?
I think it's both. Honestly, it's both. And I think that's what, so some people think that it's always over guessing. A few of my clients who have, they have to buy either equipment or materials. Yeah. It can be just as bad the other way.
The other way.
Because for sure. Especially in these inflationary times we're in, as the cost of input goods go up quickly, a salesperson may be holding a deal back, not letting the company know that it's close. And they've quoted it with 2-month-old pricing, material pricing. Then when it actually goes to hit and get closed, the material prices have gone up. There's no margin left in the deal. That happens too. So it's both, I think, on that one.
Yeah, and even in the service industry, we talked to a lot of people. I know on the podcast here, our audience is made up of digital agencies and advertising people and consulting companies. As you pare down your staff and just work with people who you don't want to have a lot of people sitting around doing nothing, which is not. So you've pared everything down, and then when a big deal comes in, you're not ready for it.
True.
Right? So I think even services, it doesn't have to just be products where you're actually, buying things in a supply chain. It could also be services where you're demanding that people be ready. You can't just, a great hairstylist, you can't call her today or him and have an appointment tomorrow morning. They're too busy. There's no way. So don't think just because Bryan's talking about products, we don't also mean services, because it could be the same there.
Fantastic point. Do you go to a stylist, Bill?
I do. I do.
Yeah. I don't know what, I go to a barber now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call him a stylist though. But when does that change? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, what price? Is it $30, $20?
Yeah. I'm 30. I think I'm $30 for a good haircut. Nice clean haircut.
I'm 35 and I call it a stylist. So that's
right. It's not a pricing thing. Is it? I don't know. My guy's Dominican. His Dominican guys know how to cut hair.
My girls are
all of his buddies. Yeah. Awesome. We digress. Let's talk about forecasting. So let's talk about like root cause. I've got a couple of takes on root cause. I'd love to get your take on these, Bill. First root cause, I believe, starts with leadership. And it's the inability of leadership to give permission to the sales team to tell them the truth. So what I think happens is the sales leader is under pressure from the CEO, CFO, or the board to have a big funnel built up of all this good forecast. They always want it to be good. Mm-hmm. And they take that energy and they pass it along to the sales team. Hey, we got to make sure we got deals. We got to have enough deals. We need to be cooking at $50 million in the pipe at any point in time. And it's got to be 50 million. We got to make sure we get 50 million in the pipe at the, And so that the sales team, just so they don't get in trouble, they just put BS in there to get it to 50. So everyone thinks it's good and it's not real. And I think that starts with leadership. I think leaders have to change their tune with that and say, even if it's bad, I still need to know where reality is. Yeah, I have to know where reality is. That's my first hit on
that. It was described really well about the chain of events that happens. It's the board, and then it's CEO, and then it's this, and it's this, and then the VP of sales or sales manager. Hey, let's quote it. Let's quote it.
Totally.
Let's get a quote out there. Well, once it's quoted, now it's part of the equation.
Yep.
Yeah. And
so true.
I had a manager who used to do that. Now we didn't monitor, we didn't measure anything like that back in the 1920s, but we did. We always defaulted to let's get a quote. Let's get a quote. Well, we don't even know what the problem is. Hey, let's get a quote. Let's have them. Then we can work on the problem later.
Right. Let's throw a number at them.
Yeah. I had one here that I think is one of the reasons for the root cause is we're dealing with human nature. We're dealing with human beings, the CEO, the sales professional, the customer, the customer's CFO. I mean, there's a lot of people in the chain, and people are just unpredictable. And what might be a promise today from a customer to buy by the end of the month, 4 hours from now turns into a massive problem inside the company, and we're going to halt all purchases for 90 days. And I had this happen about, I may have mentioned about 3 months ago. I've been working with this company for 3 or 4 months, back and forth. And there was strikes and there was things in the labor force, and we got ready to start. We're going to start in February. And he emails me the day before we're supposed to start and said, "Hey, the CEO just put a cap on all expenses." And I said, "I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah.
Done."
Yes.
And he basically said, "I don't blame you." I mean,
right.
they're all looking to leave the company. It would have been a short 3-month thing anyway. And it just felt so crappy when he did that. It's like, okay, but it's still, I don't blame him. I know he got the memo, but everything is unpredictable, especially today, especially with people coming and going. And there's a lot of vagueness in where companies are going. And so you as a sales professional selling them something will pay the price for that at some point.
That's fantastic. So true, isn't it? And everyone wants to solve AI and all this jazz, but there are humans involved. There always will be. Sure. I believe that to be true. And then, human beings are human beings, aren't they? They can just be fickle. They can be fickle. And
it's us too. It's not just the manager and the customer. It's we who don't ask that question that really is destined to determine when they're going to buy, because we're a little bit leery, a little bit afraid.
Yes.
And then we assume, well, we'll put it on the forecast for April. We'll give it an extra 30 days in April. We never even ask them. So they don't know when we're expecting them to buy because we didn't ask the question. So
true.
It's all of us. So good.
So good. And that then leads me to the next level down is the salesperson's role in this. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what Xactly does to help salespeople, is it's really about helping them forecast not just their sales, but helps them then forecast their commissions, so you can predict what you're going to make and that sort of thing. Well, that starts to me, and this is a core principle we teach all of our clients, is you have to live live a life of extreme objectivity, and you can't settle for anything less than that. And so what happens is here's the easiest way to prove, and I can prove it any sales org I go into for the first time that I've never worked with before, that they don't live in an extreme objective world, is I'll open up their CRM. They can use HubSpot or Salesforce, or doesn't matter, Goldmine, anything, any of them, Microsoft CRM. And I'll pull up all your open opportunities. This is where the funnel comes in. So here's the big funnel, forecasted funnel, right? It's $50 million there. Go look at the projected close dates and count the number that are in the past. And I guarantee you, there will be at least 10% of the open opportunities will be close date in the past, meaning the anticipated close date. Today is February 26th.
10% is all?
Well, that's what I mean. At the minimum, 10%. Usually it's in the 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
30 to 40% of your open opportunities have close dates in the past. Like, just think about that for a second. You talk about like making absolutely no sense. Then we justify that with, well, I just haven't updated it yet. That's not true either. You're just keeping it in there, just hoping that at some point it closes. You have no control over process. You have no agreed to dates or anything like that. You're just blowing in the wind. You haven't talked to them for 6 weeks. Like, they haven't said no yet, so I'm gonna keep it open. It's like, what are we doing?
They're saying no,
right? They are saying no. Like, yeah. So that's a first thing. It's a real mechanical thing to do. And when you do this, if you do it right, with zero debate, your funnel will shrink, as it should, because now it's real. Yeah. And we talk about accurate forecasting. That's the first thing we do, is we clean that up. We get all of the dates. If you live in extreme objectivity, 100% of the time, all of the close dates in the CRM are in the future. They're never, ever in the past.
Yeah.
So that's an easy one.
My take is a little different. I don't think it's at odds with that, but I feel like, when we start thinking about forecasting and when is something going to close, and we're not sure and we're off, it seems like that problem starts way earlier than when we're having our forecasting meeting, on Friday afternoon over cocktails.
Yes.
That starts early in the sales process when we erred, we didn't do something we should have done, we did something we shouldn't have done, we screwed it up. Somehow we screwed it up. And now in the 11th hour, we're paying the price. And now it's hard to go back and change something that wasn't covered in call number 2. And so what we do then is we push. What about April? Can we count on you April 15th? We start negotiating this BS. And really it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with, we never compelled them to want to even buy it in the first place. And we have them at 80%. They have us at 20%.
Right.
So I'm always trying to figure out, well, are we spending our time in the right place if we're only considering forecasting? I think it's important. Plus, I think when we get ready to, go down a path with a prospect, I think it's really good to have a forecast. It's really good to say, well, here, generally, this is where I think it's going to close. Don't hold me to it. But generally, I think these things take 4 or 5 months, and I'm looking for June 1st. I think that's really healthy.
Never really thought about that. Thought about the customer side of forecasting our deal with them. Because if it's significant, if we're going to ask them to write us a check for 50, 80, 100 grand or $2 million, it needs to be in their forecast too, in a different column, right? It better be, right? So we got, then people say we got budget for this, we don't, that sort of thing. But we should ask that question. If we've got it at 80%, where do they have it? Because they got to present their budget and their case back to their person. That's a really interesting thing I've never really thought of, is we've got it at 90%. Where do they have it? That's a great question to ask.
Yeah. Isn't that
really great?
Isn't that though? I mean, this could be a whole nother episode or 20 on when does it cease to be a buyer-seller process and start to be a partnership process? Yeah. Because I remember when I was at Woods Wire, we used to sell extension cords and cabling to large Home Depot and Walmart and these guys, Lowe's. And I always remember that certain customers we would be in sales role with. But Home Depot, you're not in sales role, you're in planning role.
Yeah, right.
They're going to need 40,000 cords at the end of June, and they come to us and say, "Look, we some from China, some from India. Where are they coming from?" And so we would align around that, and then we would talk about price, and they would nickel and dime us, and we would either hold or not hold. But it was a whole much more of a joint venture thing, because in a joint venture we can ask the question, "When do you plan on purchasing this?" What's your forecast on purchasing and dates? Here's where I need to be. Here's where I need to be price-wise. Here's where I need to be order-wise. What do you think? It's a total negotiation. That's a true partnership, and I don't think we get there often enough.
No. There's with absolute certainty we don't get there, and I think it's not difficult to do. The first step in that is just to talk about that.
Yeah.
Is like that. This goes through all of it. When it starts, we don't know each other. Our goal is to get to collaborative partnership mode as quick as we can. Yeah. And here's the thing that people miss: being in true good collaborative partnership mode, it's easy to say no, because I trust you. If I bring it, Bill and I've been friends and for decades, and it makes it real easy we may not like it, but you know what? Bill's going to go, "I'm just not interested in that. No thanks."
Yeah,
for me too. Because we had a good part. We can say that to each other.
Yeah.
Versus like some behind the scenes game playing or anything like that.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe that get out of the game, because the gamesmanship is why the forecast doesn't work too.
There you go. Absolutely. And we're teaching people gamey things in the sales process. That's why the forecast sucks.
Feet are a little gamey today, Bryan.
Gamey. Feet are gamey.
Ooh, man. Is that what you mean?
Oh, that says not what I meant, but that's really funny. I saw a commercial this morning that I think is good, but it's not relevant with that topic. Maybe I'll tell you another day.
Okay. No, you won't. You won't.
We'll get them. It's a female thing, so it's not for guys.
I got you.
It's a body deodorant for other places that need deodorant on their. Thank you. See, told you. You made me go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's on TV, so I'm not like talking out of turn. It's a television commercial, which I thought was a little awkward for television. Anyway,
okay,
I digress. I think we're onto something here. I think when we look at forecasting, and it's great. Our friends at Xactly, they have programs and software that helps all this. I think what we're doing on the podcast is we're helping that even more so by looking more upstream and saying, what are we doing or not doing upstream that impacts the accuracy of the forecast down the road for everybody involved.
How are we in our relationship? Yes. In a way that allows us to talk about things that maybe if we were different in the relationship and it was a buyer seller and I'm trying to convince you and you're trying to be convinced, that doesn't lead itself to positive and accurate forecasting. When we're in collaboration,
totally,
we're in partnership, and that's how we are.
Yes.
And I think you can be with in that with anybody. I don't think that is only large retailers. I think you can be in that mode with anybody, but you got to get there first.
Yes. We just had an opportunity come in. We met with the CEO owner whose name is on the company. His grandfather started it, and their VP of sales. And if you would have left that meeting, you would have been like, they're going to buy this for sure. Guaranteed. That's what you would have thought. It felt that way. Mm-hmm. The next meeting was VP of sales because the owner said, hey, I trust this guy. Anything he wants to do. The VP of sales, second meeting, put brakes. And you know what? He had a good logical reason for pumping brakes for this program, to the point where he sold me. I'm like, you know what? It's too soon to go in like all in. Mm-hmm. We need to start small because he's got a new team. They did big restructure, all that. That to me feels like a really good partnership, where our revenue on the deal went down by 90% or more than that. Like it went down to a tenth of what it was, but it is a start of a great partnership.
Yeah.
Which will allow us to grow into the other,
when it's time.
It's time, because it wasn't time. That felt really good.
Yeah.
That's really, really great. That's a really good episode. So
good topic. Okay.
Yeah, we love it.
Once again, give us Xactly Corp's website.
Xactlycorp.com if you want to plan accurately both your forecasts, more importantly, your commissions. And for you sales leaders, if you want to do the same thing, go check out Xactlycorp.com. We're going to have a member of their leadership team, Taylor, on here with us in an episode here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
can't wait to hear his take on all this stuff. Like Bill said, he's going to come on, listen to these 3 episodes and tell us where we're wrong.
We should probably tell him not to listen to these.
Totally hit him cold, for sure. So,
all
right,
bye
later.